In this presentation, I'm going to address the economic background of many of the changes that occurred in Italy after World War II, generally from the 50s on, which greatly impacted Italian culture and Italian literature. Starting from the mid 50s, Italy underwent some really dramatic changes. Um, the GDP of Italy increased dramatically. Um, em- Employment, per capita income, industrial production, and services increased dramatically at the disadvantage of agriculture. So, a lot of jobs were offered in agriculture simply because people were leaving to seek their fortunes in big towns. The rate of increase really peaked in a period of 5 years between 1958 and 1963. During this period, the economy grew at double the speed of the average European economy, and per capita income grew more rapidly than in any other Western European economy. This is why in Italy this period has been nicknamed as the economic miracle. Now, practically speaking, in everyday life, what did this translate into? It gave rise to mass consumption, and it also exacerbated the divide in the Italian economy between the north, which was becoming more and more wealthy, and the south, which was traditionally more agricultural and which saw further demise. Um, so, in the regions with the highest economic growth, also it gave rise to massive urbanization. So the growth in the economy remained a predominantly northern occurrence, which affected primarily the confines of the so-called industrial triangle. And if you look at this map, you can see quickly why it's called the industrial triangle, because you can draw an imaginary line between the three cities which benefited the most from this rapid economic growth. These three cities being Milan, Turin, and Genova. So, if so much of the growth was occurring in the north of Italy, you can imagine that this phenomenon generated a massive migration movement within the Italian peninsula. So, this was, of course, a northward migration. So, it was a massive relocation of the Italian population, which occurred primarily the peak years were the decade between 1951 and 1961, where 10% of the South emigrated to the North. We are used to discussing Italian migration towards places like North America, South America, but between the 50s and the early 60s, there was also this massive migration, relocation of the Italian population from the agricultural south to the industrial north. Milan, which was really the success story of northern Italy, was inundated by immigrants. And this, of course, generated this massive construction project and new, cheap, really quickly built apartments surrounded Milan, many of which didn't provide any basic services. So there was this incremental growth of the urban space of Milan. And this is a picture taken at the Central Railway Station in Milan, where you can see this would have been daily scenes between the early 50s and the early 60s. So, with this dramatic change in the economic landscape, you can imagine that consumer spending changed and it shifted, moving from basic goods such as food to a more diversified array of items which people could afford at this point. There was a demand for new products, products of greater exclusivity, which were often promoted by mass media advertisement campaigns. For example, you can see appliances became items that experienced rapid distribution and consumption in Italy during this period. Some of the most memorable ad campaigns were designed and produced by J. Walter Thompson, which dominated the advertising market in Italy. And if you look, for example, at this ad 1957 for a detergent called Omo, it's indicative of this multinational advertising presence really distributing and fostering the ethic of, and motivation of an American style consumer culture. And in this print ad, basically, where they are trying to promote a whiter than white laundry, which is not an end in and of itself, but it's presented in the larger context as being a sign of progress. Whiter laundry meaning a more evolved and modern housewife and household. So that was the message. Publishers over and over in selling consumer goods. And again, here you see more ads for print ads for appliances. They were in big demands. They stressed an American style connection between consumption and social mobility. Magazines functioned as symbols to mark the social achievement of an isolated nuclear family, which was one of the byproducts of this radical economic change and also of migration. Families became disengaged and distanced often from the larger sort of extended family structure that would have dominated the agricultural South and became these isolated units of consumption. Now, advertising was still limited in Italy, where television was state run, but this phenomenon called carosello was extremely popular. It had a sort of sky high viewership, and it was an Italian television advertising show. So during the day, since television was state run, there were no commercials, but they were all kind of concentrated during this period at night in the early evening following the evening news. And this advertising show on Rai ran from 1957 to 1977. And the commercials had very high production value. Very often they were directed by legitimately famous Italian directors like Federico Fellini, for instance. They were often serious, so they got the consumer viewer hooked because they followed each other as mini sort of telenovelas or mini dramas. They often showed sketch comedy, films using live action and animation puppetry if the target was children. And in fact, children were encouraged to watch this commercial. And one of the common refrains in Italian culture during this period of 2 decades was that kids could stay up until the end of Carosello. That was kind of the threshold indicating that kids had to go to sleep. So through Carosello, consumer goods acquired more and more prominence. A famous advertising campaign, which was extremely revolutionary. Now, remember that women during this period of economic growth actually counterintuitively sort of moved out en masse of the workforce. Women who had been probably actively engaged and participants in the agricultural economy of the South became stay-at-home mother as the families relocated to the North. And this 1960s campaign by Barilla is seen as a kind of watershed because, as you can see, look at the image. There is a woman. She is looking straight at us, confident in her value and abilities. She does not look like a traditional housewife. In fact, she is alone with the product. She is not in a kitchen. In this picture, she has no husband and no kids around her, which more traditional previous advertisements would have utilized as a kind of refrain, visual refrain. And if you look at the tagline, c'è una gran cuoca in voi, there is a Greek chef hidden inside you. So it is a way of encouraging this woman to channel her own creativity, her culinary expertise, and desire for self expression. Again, this was a commercial and an ad campaign which was launched by British CVP. And as you can see, again, an increased reliance on big multinational advertising agencies to create these campaigns and to sell products in Italy. So the kind of consumer landscape, which includes, of course, food, because so much of it was targeted at the acquisition of appliances for the kitchen, for the preservation of food, refrigerations, for the preparation of food, modern stoves, and eventually food products. Now, this kind of eating and shopping American style created the expansion in the food landscape of the first Italian supermarket, which opened in Italy in 1957 in Milan in Viale Regina Giovanna, where actually this supermarket survived until a few years back, where it was replaced by Supermarket Esselunga was replaced by another food store, but belonging to a German multinational. And here is a picture of an early shopper in a supermarket. Now, how did this come about? Because Italy was and still is to some extent really a country of small shop owners. In the mid 50s, Nelson Rockefeller, who had been the mayor of New York City and would become in the 70s vice president to Gerald Ford, founded among other members, which included two Italian brothers, the Caprotti brothers, who began with a share of 18% and are today actually the sole owners of Esselunga. So, with this kind of sort of large stakeholders group, they began what was the first Italian supermarket chains, the Italian Supermarkets SPA, Società per Azioni. Italy had lived through two world wars, fascism, many years of poverty caused by the war, of course. However, it didn't lack what it didn't lack was stores. As I had said a few slides previously, these stores were mostly small. They were family run, and the grocery store was, with regards to stores, still a backward sector, even compared to other European countries. However, Italians loved their small stores and usually trusted the shop owner of the various stores where they got their goods. So it was really a way of shopping for grocery that was deeply entrenched into the Italian subconscious in a way. In 1951, there were over 950,000 stores and small businesses catering to the public in Italy. Over 800,000 and had only one or two employees. So they were extremely small. Only about 198 had more than 100, and only one had more than 500. And with so many small shopkeepers, there was a strong political base for resistance to modernize. So they could easily band together and form a powerful lobby. And this is a picture of one such little family run stores. Italians, moreover, they were not super eager for a change. They were accustomed to small shops. They often had personal, friendly relations with the shopkeepers, whom they trust for the quality of the food. It was part really of the social network of everyday life. You knew the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper knew you. But in the late 50s, we had this idea of modernity coming from the United States, and the supermarket, of course, was part of that. People were seeing supermarkets in TV shows, in movies, for instance, through popular culture. And the shopping in a supermarket was perceived as one of the important facets of this wave of modernization. Much of what really was broadcast in Italy was a kind of imaginary America, which was brought in by Hollywood movies and really crafting ad campaigns, which were created and negotiated by large multinationals. America was at the time seen by many as a beacon of freedom, of modernity, and of material wealth. But again, remember, this was a kind of image that America, which had survived Second World War as the big victor, was part of the hegemonic image of America that, of course, this large um, public relation machines and advertising through Hollywood was propagating around the world. With the supermarket, America not only brought a new type of technical organization, but it was seen as a symbol to the end of poverty. The supermarkets had a more efficient organization, self-service. Remember, in the small mom and pop stores, customers cannot touch products. They have to rely on the middleman. Good logistics, a different relation with the producers. They also could buy big quantities and sell at a low price. Hence, of course, they were perceived as grave competition by small shop owners which could not really process the kind of volume a supermarket could, and perceived supermarkets as a big threat. So it was a revolution. And here you can see some ads of foreign brands that started inundating the Italian market, like Coca-Cola. Um, Another ad for Coca-Cola in the 60s. Self-service was also a particularly momentous change, because for the first time customers could touch the goods that they were purchasing without the mediation of the shopkeepers. So this really changed the consumer relations to the goods. So the first Italian supermarket, as we said, was inaugurated in November 1957 in Milan. The sign, which is a sign you still see in Italy now, if you travel there and if you go grocery shopping, was designed by Max Uber and was characterized by an S whose top was very, very long. You can see supermarket. It covers the entire length of the word. And you can see in this slide, this is still the logo of the same chain, which was rebranded as S Lunga, literally long S. And the next slides show you some ads for S Lunga in the 60s. 69 mille lire lunghe, just like the S stretches over supermarket, S lunga, mille lire lunghe. You stretch your 1,000 lire, so you can buy more with less. Some other ads from the 70s, and you can see, of course, sort of appropriating the pacifist movement, among other things. Now, if we jump in time, these are some ads from the 90s, where Esselunga, as you can see, is beginning to promote so-called bio products, which are green products, organic, hormone-free. So, this sort of consciousness about the environment and about health appropriated. This was a very, very successful ad campaign in 2001, where products sold by Esselunga are used in these word games. Porro seduto echoes toro seduto, which is sitting bull, but porro also means sleek. Vincent van Gogh instead of Gog. Coco is coconut. John Lemon needs no explanation. Another successful campaign, 2006, where again, very playful, they used Esselunga products to recreate zodiac signs. You have Pisces, Aries, Leo, and Cancer. Now, when we think of food and successful modern ad campaigns, um, a very important ad campaign in the food industry, in the development of the food industry in Italy, but also sort of to promote a product which became extremely popular in Italy, was an ad campaign put together by Il Mulino Bianco, which was a company, as you can see in the logo, owned by Barilla. Remember, Barilla, which is known, primarily for its pasta, was also responsible for that sort of proto-feminist ad campaign in the early 60s. So Mulino Bianco was a new brand, again owned by under the umbrella of Barilla, and it revolutionized breakfast habits in Italy. Now, by the 70s, it was no longer the time of the economic miracle. The gas prices, the oil crisis, much as it did in the United States, had created a profound state of economic crisis in Italy. And to cope with the difficult financial and social scenario, Barilla chose to focus on product diversification and identified bakery products as a strategic market. So the first pack of cookies for the Mulino Bianco, literally white mill brand, and you will see why. White mill is supposed to evoke this romanticized view of Italy's agricultural past. So just these cookies were Galletti, Tarallucci, Mugnai, and so forth. They appeared in shops in the mid 70s, October 1975, and they were an instant success. The new brand name and logo, which was picked to underline the attention paid to the quality of the ingredients, was responding to a new trend towards recovering values linked to nature and tradition, which began to establish itself in those years. So, at a period of economic crisis, no one is looking at modernizing anymore because this rapid modernization is perceived actually as one of the causes for this crisis. But instead, there is this return to a kind of feeling of nostalgia. The brand success was destined to grow dramatically together with the range of products available. Today, Mulino Bianco includes all sorts of products: cookies, pastry, mini cakes, soft and dry breads, and fruit smoothies. At a time when industrial society was felt to be really under threat from an impending energy crisis, Mulino Bianco proposed to return to an imagined pre industrial past: authentic, genuine food, honest work, and the land and the values of the past that never changes, a landscape of rolling hills, rustic breakfasts, and so forth. So this is extremely romanticized agriculture. Barilla, through its subsidiary Mulino Bianco, has launched since the initial 1970 creation of this new bakery products, many other extremely successful advertising campaigns, and has stayed really on top of evolving narrative codes in Italian culture and symbolic values, and has been really acutely in touch with Italy's social cultural climate, which it has leveraged to sell its products. Now, for instance, another kind of watershed moment was a few years after the launching in 1978, with the much celebrated launching of Coccio, which was this line of bowls and plates, a bowl for milk, featuring the logo, of course, as you can see there, the white mill, Mulino Bianco, sketched as a drawing, and launched a hugely popular history of collecting and merchandising. So, through this collecting, you had to collect a variety of loyalty points, which you would collect, of course, by consuming more and more products of Mulino Bianco. Then you would get your little merchandising gifts as a result of this connection. In the 80s, they launched sorpresine, literally little surprises. Now remember, Mulino Bianco offers a variety of snack packs for children. So the little surprises appeared inside snack packs, which were little gifts for kids, born out of a partnership with Graziella Carbone, a specialist in sales promotion, And what were these gifts? They were really innocuous, small gifts, small playing cards, erasers in the shape of the Mulino Bianco products, items for school, miniature board games, stickers, and all of this, of course, uh, did everything to increase their market share, and they became cultural icons almost in the 80s and 90s. And in 2010, 35 years after they first appeared, Mulino Bianco celebrated its sorpresine by offering them finally in digital version. In 1990, another important step was taken, the realization of a creation of a mulino itself in the hills of Siena in Tuscany, which became ever since the set for a new series of advertising campaigns dedicated to the Mulino family, directed by a famous contemporary Italian director, Giuseppe Tornatore, with music by Ennio Morricone, who is one of the great musical talents of Italy, who scored multiple Italian classics. So, really high production values, expensive productions, and you can see the creation, of this, um, this fictional mill, this fictional agricultural past comes to life with the building of an actual Mulino Bianco.